The sun may rise golden across the savannah, painting the acacia trees with a blush of warmth. But for the newest lives in this ancient land, dawn is rarely a promise. It is a warning. The air, heavy with the scent of dust and dung, carries the distant coughing of lions, the shrill whistles of hornbills, and the ever-present rustle of grasses hiding more than just wind. It is in this uneasy theatre that life begins, not in celebration, but in secrecy, blood, and fear. Beneath the thorny cover of a thicket, far from the pride's usual resting ground, a lioness crouches in strained silence. Her flanks quiver with the labor of birth, her amber eyes scanning the horizon, as if the very act of bringing life into the world has invited death to her doorstep. There is no midwife here, no lullabies, only instinct and the cruel gamble of survival. When the first cub slides into the world, slick and shuddering, it is greeted not by warmth, but by the harsh nip of dry air and the rough lick of its mother's tongue, scraping away the veil of afterbirth to coax it into breath. It lets out a fragile cry, too weak to matter, too loud to be safe. Elsewhere, beneath the earth, a hyena burrow seethes with quiet violence. The den, though crude and shadowed, is a fortress of motherhood, a narrow labyrinth of tunnels leading to a damp chamber where the matriarch's latest litter writhes and wails. Their eyes sealed shut, these cubs resemble little more than damp rodents, yet within hours, a brutal hierarchy is already taking shape. The stronger pup, often by mere chance of being born minutes earlier, clamps onto its sibling with tiny, vicious jaws. Squeals echo off the burrow walls. In the hyena world, dominance is not taught. It is enforced from the first breath, etched in scars and whimpers. Mothers do not intervene. They watch, blank-eyed, as nature administers its earliest test. Out in the open plains, life begins with no protection at all. A Mother Thompson's gazelle, legs trembling, stands alone in a shallow dip in the earth, her flanks shuddering as she delivers a fawn still wet and folded like an origami of limbs. Within seconds, the mother nudges it to its feet. There is no time for affection. The scent of blood is a beacon, and predators do not delay. The fawn stumbles, falls, rises again, its muscles barely functioning, while its mother nuzzles and prods with desperate urgency. Each second spent on the ground is a heartbeat closer to death. Somewhere behind the curtain of grass, jackals watch. A tawny eagle circles above. Even in the moment of birth, the fawn is already prey. The paradox of birth in the savannah is not the miracle of life, but the miracle that any life persists at all. The ecosystem does not offer a lull in its violence for the young. Instead, it demands their participation immediately. For every gazelle that finds its legs, a dozen are devoured before their first sunrise. For every lion cub nestled safely in a hollow log, there are others dragged from hiding by leopards, trampled by buffalo, or simply left behind during a relocation gone wrong. The land is not cruel. It is indifferent, and that indifference is a harsher tutor than any claw or fang. Newborn elephants, in contrast, are heralded with a ceremony of touch and trumpet. Born into the safety of the herd, the calves still emerge into chaos. Towering legs surrounding them, trunks probing to check for breath, warmth, identity. Yet even this fortress has its cracks. Hyenas test the fringes of the herd at night. A misstep in a muddy riverbed can trap a calf, its cries muffled in muck as crocodiles emerge like ancient curses. And when drought grips the land, even elephants cannot shield their young from thirst and heat stroke. Birth may come with celebration here, but survival is still a daily vote cast by chance. In one of the more ironic cruelties of the savannah, the most dangerous threat to a newborn may be its own kind. Among lions, a new dominant male means a blood purge. Any cub not sired by him is a genetic liability. Females, though ferocious protectors, are often outnumbered. The tiny mews of cubs in hiding become death knells as they are sniffed out, snatched by the scruff, and silenced with a single shake. This brutal reset ensures only the fittest lineage prevails. And yet, this savagery, horrifying through a human lens, is precisely what keeps the ecosystem evolving, refining predators to their sharpest edge. But perhaps the most chilling lesson the savannah offers its newborns is this: stillness is not safety. For the nocturnal newborns, aardvarks, porcupines, spring hares, even the cloak of darkness is porous. Owls see what the eyes miss. Snakes smell what the feet don't touch. The night is filled with invisible fangs and talons. One moment, a burrow is a cradle. The next, it is a coffin. Yet despite all this, or perhaps because of it, The savannah is alive with the thrum of persistence. Every whimper, every twitch of a newborn's ear is a thread in the vast fabric of life that stretches across plains and rivers and thorny thickets. Danger is not the exception here. It is the condition of existence. Birth in this land is not the beginning of life's story. It is the opening line of a chase scene. And so, under a moon smeared with dust, and above grasslands whispering with secrets, the savannah's children take their place on nature's stage, blinking, wobbling, trembling, and already hunted. The first breath may come easy, but the second must be earned. In the vast savannah, where golden grasses hide both promise and peril, the battle for survival doesn't always begin with tooth and claw from an outside predator. Sometimes the first enemy wears the same fur, bleats with the same voice, and sleeps by your side. Long before the jackal circles the den or the leopard prowls the shadows, the fight begins at home, between siblings, womb mates, blood-bound adversaries born into a world that offers too little for too many. Beneath the cracked crust of the earth, in a burrow dug into dry clay and cloaked by shrubs, the den of a spotted hyena is alive with the muffled yelps of new life. The pups, born in near darkness, are black-furred, sightless, and already dangerous. Within minutes of entering the world, they crawl blindly toward each other, their tiny jaws snapping with a venom that belies their size. Teeth, unlike in many other carnivores, arrive with birth. Evolution did not wait for politeness to grow in. The stronger one, often just slightly larger or born a few moments earlier, instinctively clamps down on the other's throat or ear. The den fills with the sharp squeaks of protest, but there is no referee in this match. The mother, resting a few feet away, watches in stillness, perhaps gauging which pup deserves her milk, or perhaps unmoved altogether. In many litters, only one pup walks out of that first week with open eyes. In the strange arithmetic of nature, such violence is not dysfunction. It is a crude but efficient solution. Spotted hyenas, for all their fearsome jaws and reputation as scavengers, operate under a strict matriarchy. Females are dominant, not only over males but even over their own mothers if they survive long enough. To reach that height, a pup must prove itself early, because food is rarely plentiful, and attention even less so. When two siblings battle, it's not personal, it's an investment. High in the acacia trees where carrion birds perch in the heat haze, white-backed vultures crowd together in nests built from bone-dry sticks. Their chicks, downy and clumsy, share little of their parents' ghastly elegance, but what they lack in grace, they make up for in ruthlessness. If the older chick feels even a hint of weakness in the younger, a slower feeding, a weaker cry, it pecks and claws until the sibling is flung from the nest like a discarded rag. Down below, the earth claims what the sky rejected. Irony clings like smoke. The vultures, custodians of death, are among the most merciless in their own beginnings. Even among mammals often romanticized for their nurturing, lions, cheetahs, elephants, the idea of family is always tempered by scarcity. In the thickets of the savannah, lion cubs squirm for position as their mother lies flat, her teats exposed like contested territory. There is milk, yes, but not enough for all when times are lean. The cubs, their paws still oversized and clumsy, lash at each other with flared claws and guttural grunts. These skirmishes seem small, but over time they carve hierarchy into the very flesh of the pride. The stronger cubs grow faster, nurse longer, and explore earlier, while the weaker are pushed aside, not just by siblings, but by fate itself. Occasionally a lioness may birth cubs from multiple fathers, if she mated with several males in a single estrus cycle, and in such cases tension ripples even more deeply. Cubs sired by the dominant male receive more protection, often unconsciously. Others, less favored by lineage, may be overlooked or even abandoned during relocations, left behind as the pride moves on. In this wild democracy of survival, bloodlines whisper louder than loyalty. Out on the plains, cheetah mothers, solitary by nature, raise their cubs in secret. For the first few weeks, the cubs are cloaked in a silvery mane, a false mohawk, mimicking honey badgers and offering a weak bluff of ferocity. But no disguise hides them from each other. As they grow, the cubs compete viciously for every scrap their mother brings back. If she kills a hare, they don't share. They brawl. There are no growls of warning, no familial restraint. Only one cub gets the liver, the heart, the best bites. And when food is scarce, the weakest simply fades. Not with a dramatic fight, but with a slow hunger that wears them thin until they stop following. The mother may pause, glance back, but the pace never breaks. The savannah does not tolerate pity. not even in a mother's heart. Even herbivores, those gentle grazers we imagine as peaceable families, carry their own hidden dramas. Among zebra foals, competition begins the moment hooves hit dirt. Mothers often favor the strongest newborn, the one who stands first or suckles most vigorously. A second foal, birthed during exceptional conditions or by rare twins, rarely survives. In wildebeest herds, calves that fall behind during migration are sometimes nudged, even lifted by their mothers. But if they cannot keep pace, the decision is swift. The herd moves, one becomes none, and yet, despite the ever-present tension and merciless calculations, the bonds that emerge from this crucible are powerful beyond measure. Hyena cubs that survive together grow into formidable allies, often ruling their clans for decades. Lion siblings who brawl as cubs become a hunting team, coordinating ambushes with precision. Elephant calves that play fight with tuskless heads later defend each other in real battles. What begins as rivalry becomes repertoire, a training ground for the violence that will one day be turned outward. There is a strange poetry to it all, the idea that the harshest love is the most effective. While humans swaddle and shelter, the savannah sharpens and sheds. Affection is not absent here. It is simply expressed in the gritted terms of survival. To nurse your sibling today is to outpace them tomorrow. To spar today is to save their life a year from now when lions circle the waterhole and panic threatens to scatter the herd. The skills forged in the nursery are the ones that decide who lives to breed and who is forgotten in the tall grass. In a place where every shadow might hold teeth and every sunrise might be the last, family is not a sanctuary. It is the forge. The siblings of the savannah do not inherit safety. They earn their scars from those who share their blood. And so, as the heat rises and the cicadas buzz in their endless summer chorus, another pair of pups, cubs, or chicks begins their first fight. Not against the world, but against the mirror of themselves. Here, rivalry is not a flaw of nature, it is the curriculum. The sun begins its slow ascent over the savannah, gilding the horizon with a syrupy amber light that filters through dust particles and dapples the ground in soft hues of fire and gold. In this vast cathedral of grass and wind, a quiet procession stirs beneath the trees. The elephants are on the move. Their footsteps, almost soundless on the cracked earth, carry the weight of memory. Not just of seasons, but of stories passed down in silence. At the head of the column walks the matriarch, her ears like great parchment scrolls flapping gently with each stride, her tusks worn but steady. She knows where to go, even when the sky offers no clues and the air smells of drought. She is not guessing, she is remembering. Behind her the clan follows in trust, calves snug beneath their mothers, juveniles walking in sync, and the occasional mischievous youngster tugging at a tail or straying for a moment before being herded back into line by a low rumble. It is a frequency too deep for human ears, yet it hums through the soil like an ancient hymn, a language of vibrations and low frequencies that carry across miles. The matriarch teaches not through words or commands, but through movement. When to rest beneath the shade of a baobab, when to dig in a dry riverbed for water long buried beneath silt, and when to sprint without warning as distant thunder morphs into the roar of predators. The young ones learn not from explanations but from patterns repeated over years, from pauses before wind changes, from silence that follows distant alarm calls, from the memory of what the herd did last time and the time before that. In this desert of uncertainty, her memory is their map. Far from the bulk and gravitas of elephants, the lionesses rise with the same dawn light, stretching their muscles in languid synchrony as if rehearsing a performance. A pride may look like a loose band of lounging cats to the casual eye, but within it lies a matriarchal engine built for survival. The elder lioness, often scarred and seasoned by years of battle, takes the lead not through dominance alone, but through competence. She has learned not only how to kill, but when to fail, how to abandon a chase the moment the wind shifts, how to circle without being seen, how to use the terrain as weapon and shield. These lessons are not secrets she guards, but gifts she passes on through example. The cubs, still clumsy and comically oversized in paw and ear, follow their mothers on mock patrols, creeping through tall grass, tripping over roots, and pouncing at shadows. When the hunt begins in earnest, they are not the stars of the show, but they are in the front row. The lionesses do not slow their pace to explain. They show, with every crouch, every coordinated flank, every frozen breath. The hunt is a dance choreographed by generations, and even in failure it teaches. A missed zebra is still a masterclass in strategy. A failed ambush still etches a lesson deeper than instinct ever could. Cheetah mothers take a different approach. Unlike the social structure of lions or elephants, cheetahs are solitary artists, and their maternal teachings are almost intimate in their delivery. A cheetah mother will spend hours in silent observation before nudging her cubs into practice, dragging half-alive hares back to the den so her young can learn the art of finishing the job. It may look cruel, but it is a deliberate act of education. Speed alone does not feed a cheetah. Timing, precision, and the ability to adjust mid-chase are what keep her lineage from vanishing into the grass. She runs beside her cubs, sometimes behind them, sometimes pushing them forward with a playful swipe. And when the wind screams across the plains and a real hunt begins, she does not scold failure or reward success. She simply runs, and they follow, because that is the only way to learn the rhythm of survival. Even among the lesser-known species, the maternal classroom unfolds with quiet elegance. In burrows tucked beneath termite mounds, warthog mothers teach their young the sacred geometry of escape routes. How to enter the den in reverse so tusks face out. How to memorize the surrounding trails and bolt at the faintest hint of rustle. In the branches above, vervet monkeys pass down not just alarm calls, but their specific meanings. One chirp for eagle, another for leopard, a different tone for snake. The young must not only mimic, but interpret. The cost of error is too high for guesswork. Among the birds too, matriarchs teach with feathers and finesse. A crowned crane mother does not just guide her chicks to food. She leads them through dance, tapping out lessons with flutters, bows, and calls that signal safety, danger, or curiosity. Each movement is part of a lexicon too graceful to seem serious, and yet it is the difference between starvation and survival. The paradox that echoes across the savannah is that while instinct lays the foundation, it is education that refines it. A newborn impala may know how to stand and run within minutes, but knowing when to run, how to freeze, and which direction to take, that comes from watching the herd, from trailing behind a mother who chooses when to trust her nose and when to bolt without reason. Nature gifts the tools, but only the matriarchs sharpen them. And in all of this, there is a quiet tenderness that balances the brutality. A lioness nuzzling her cub after a failed pounce is not coddling weakness. She is marking a moment, sealing it with contact so the cub remembers not just the failure, but the warmth that followed. An elephant wrapping her trunk around a calf's shoulders as they pass through thorny acacia is not merely guiding, she is reinforcing trust, reminding the young that following is not submission, but survival. A cheetah sharing a bloodied kill with a panting cub is not spoiling. She is sealing the lesson with flavor. As the day stretches and the sun blazes high, the classroom continues without pause. Shadows lengthen, vultures circle, and the cycle of predator and prey spins on. But through it all, the matriarchs remain, not as mere protectors, but as professors of the oldest university on Earth. Their curriculum is written in footprints and scent trails, their lectures spoken in body language and consequence, and their graduates are not measured by grades, but by whether they live to teach the next. In this world, knowledge is not passed with pride or ceremony. It is passed with urgency, grit, and the unspoken understanding that to learn is to live, and to forget is to vanish. And so the lessons go on, whispered in the breeze, pressed into the earth, and carried in the hearts of the young who follow, always watching, always listening, always learning from the ones who walked before. As the sun climbs over the savannah, casting long shadows across the cracked soil and golden grasses, the world begins to stir with a curious mix of anticipation and naivete. The air is warm but not yet heavy, and the wind carries the scent of dry dust, fresh dung, and distant tension, the unmistakable smell of things about to go wrong. This is a land where every sunrise is a second chance, but for the young, it is also a test, one they did not study for, but must pass to survive. It is the hour of apprentices, where predators in training take their first stumbles into the world of the hunt, eager, ill-prepared, and entirely unaware of how badly things can go. Near a patch of brittle grass that shimmers like copper in the morning light, a trio of cheetah cubs lies sprawled beneath a flat-topped acacia, their bellies rising and falling with slow, contented rhythm. Their mother is nearby, scanning the horizon with the sharp precision only hunger can refine. She is gaunt but patient, poised like a taut bowstring. Her cubs, on the other hand, are anything but stealthy. One chews lazily on a twig. Another bats at a dung beetle with clumsy paws, purring in frustration when it rolls out of reach. The third, struck by inspiration, launches a full-speed ambush on a grasshopper, only to tumble into a thorn bush, hissing and sneezing in a storm of pride and pollen. It's adorable, but useless. In this world, speed without purpose is nothing more than wasted energy. Their mother does not reprimand them. She simply walks, slow at first, then faster, then a sudden dash, her belly nearly brushing the ground as she cuts a path through the grass with elegance the cubs can only dream of. The cubs follow, not in synchrony, but in chaos. One veering too far right, one lagging behind, the third getting distracted by a butterfly. The chase she initiates ends in dust and disappointment, not because the antelope escaped on merit, but because the cubs made noise at the wrong time. The lesson lands harder than a scolding ever could. Opportunity, once ruined, does not circle back. In a distant clearing, the lion cubs are awake earlier than usual, buzzing with the kind of excitement that often precedes a mistake. The pride is on the move, and the older lionesses have already begun fanning out with purpose, their bodies low, ears flattened, tails rigid but twitching at the tips. This is not play, this is business. But the cubs haven't yet drawn a line between the two. They creep behind their mothers, mimicking the stalk, trying their best to suppress their instinct to wrestle one another every few steps. One lunges at his sister's tail, and both tumble into a giggling scuffle that sends a flock of guinea fowls screeching into the air. The zebra herd, upwind but not oblivious, catches the commotion and bolts in a storm of pounding hooves and alarm snorts. The hunt is over before it began. The lionesses stand frozen in the grass, their expressions unreadable, but their disappointment thick in the air. The cubs, confused but unrepentant, blink up at them. Failure, it seems, wears many costumes. Sometimes it's a poor angle of attack, sometimes it's the enthusiastic tackle of a sibling who hasn't yet learned that tails are not toys in the tall grass. The savannah is forgiving in few things, and patience is only one of them. A pack of spotted hyenas, meanwhile, is moving with unusual coordination through a dry riverbed still littered with the bones of last season's misfortunes. Their laughter, often mistaken for joy, now blends with a more sinister undertone, anticipation. The adults move in a crescent, herding wildebeest calves away from the main herd, but behind them trail the pups, lanky, awkward, with oversized paws and none of the menace of their elders. They shadow the hunt like interns on their first assignment, ears perked, eyes wide, muscles twitching with nervous eagerness. When the adults close in, forming the deadly vice that hyenas are known for, one of the pups yips too soon and charges prematurely, scattering the target and throwing the formation into chaos. A wildebeest escapes, and the adults halt, some growling low, others walking off without even a glance back. But in this hierarchy, failure is a tolerated rite of passage. The pups are not scolded. The wasted hunt is punishment enough. They learn in real time what a mistake costs not just them, but the group. Their education is communal, and though the curriculum is brutal, the mentorship is absolute. There are no second-hand lessons here, only first-hand consequences. Elsewhere in the savannah, smaller scenes unfold in miniature echoes of the larger dramas. A serval kitten crouches in tall grass, mimicking its mother's stillness, only to sneeze and send a mouse darting for safety. A bat-eared fox pup pounces clumsily on a beetle, misses, and watches it fly off with what can only be described as indignation. A martial eagle chick, recently fledged, attempts its first stoop on a hare and nearly crashes headfirst into a bush. Each failure leaves a scar of memory, a groove carved into instinct. Over time, these grooves deepen into habits, and those habits become the rhythm of survival. Even among scavengers, the art of acquisition is a learned skill. Young jackals trail behind vultures and older kin, trying to gauge the timing. Arrive too early, and you risk confrontation. Too late, and there's nothing left but fur. One adolescent makes the mistake of grabbing a prize before the dominant male is finished and receives a quick, brutal nip to the ear. Blood stains the dust, but the meat is surrendered. The lesson is simple: hierarchy first, hunger second. And yet, despite the constant setbacks and painful embarrassments, the young persist. Their failures are stitched into their growing bodies, not as shame, but as maps, cartographies of what not to do. They learn not only how to hunt, but when to give up, when to wait, when to risk it all. They learn that sometimes the biggest predator isn't the lion or the hyena, but a hidden puff adder in the grass, or the sun itself, beating down until mistakes become hallucinations. They learn to read the breeze like scripture, to trust the twitch of an ear or the flick of a tail more than their own impulses. In the savannah, success is not an inheritance, it is an achievement. And every predator, from the sleekest leopard to the most chaotic hyena pup, earns their right to be feared not by talent alone, but by failing 1,000 times and living long enough to remember why. There is no shame in missing the first pounce, in scaring away the prey, in tripping over a root mid-stalk. The shame would be not learning from it. And so, as the sun arcs toward its zenith and the land wavers with heat, the juveniles lie in shaded patches, licking wounds both real and imagined, already replaying the morning's blunders in that silent theater behind their eyes. Somewhere out there, the next lesson waits. Another chase, another miss, another meal lost to inexperience. But failure here is not the end of the road. It is the price of growing up wild. Morning unfolds over the savannah, not with silence, but with the chaotic symphony of youth. A tapestry of shrill bleats, high-pitched growls, thudding hooves, and the rustling of grass torn up by tumbling bodies. The golden plains, which from a distance seem still and serene, are in truth alive with the undisciplined energy of children. Not human children, but the kind born with hooves, paws, claws, and unrefined instincts that spark like wildfire under the early sun. This is the wild's unruliest classroom, not a place of textbooks and chalkboards, but of wrestling matches, mock ambushes, and the thrill of discovering what their bodies can do. It is a world of games with consequences, where play is the first rehearsal for the brutal performances that adulthood will demand. Near a shallow waterhole, slick with last night's mud and guarded by the gentle murmuring of doves, a small group of elephant calves engages in a slow-motion skirmish. Their oversized ears flap like sails caught in the breeze, their trunks swinging with comical unpredictability as they push, shove, and occasionally trip over their own ambition. One charges with theatrical confidence, head raised, trunk flailing like a sword in the hands of a drunk duelist, only to stumble backward as another responds with a better-timed counter-push. Their mothers, enormous and steady nearby, cast the occasional glance but do not intervene. They have seen enough of these battles to know their value. Beneath the silliness lies strategy. These mock charges are not just bursts of joy. They're lessons in momentum, balance, and intimidation. After all, one day those same movements will decide whether a predator backs off or bites down. A few hundred meters away, in a sun-dappled clearing framed by thorn brush, lion cubs burst from the undergrowth like uncoiled springs. Their fur, still touched by the faded spots of infancy, glistens with dust and dew as they leap onto each other in an endless loop of mock attacks and exaggerated falls. There is no plan, no rules, only instinct expressing itself through teeth and tackle. One lands a surprisingly graceful pounce on a sibling, only to be rolled over seconds later and smothered in an avalanche of tiny paws and tail swipes. The mock growls they emit are more enthusiastic than threatening, and their bites land with more drool than force. But make no mistake, this chaos is curriculum. The clumsy swipes teach timing, the tumbles hone coordination. The victories, however small, spark confidence, while the defeats stitch humility into their growing minds. The irony, of course, is that in a land defined by death, it is play, seemingly purposeless and wasteful, that shapes the most efficient killers. Even the grazers know this, though their games look different. On the edge of the plain where the grasses shimmer in mirage-like waves, a cluster of young gazelles darts in and out of a loose circle, their hooves barely touching the earth. They race not to flee but to feel. Their bodies, gangly and still finding rhythm, test the limits of their limbs as they zigzag wildly, stopping short only to turn on a dime and launch off in another direction. There is no immediate threat, no lion in pursuit, but they run as if there is, because someday there will be. The grace they lack today might buy them seconds tomorrow, and seconds out here are everything. Among the trees where the shadows grow deeper, even the arboreal youth join the game. A vervet monkey, still small enough to fit in its mother's curled tail, swings down from a branch and smacks a companion with a twig before scrambling away with delighted shrieks. The chase is instant and chaotic, through branches, across limbs, and occasionally falling with a thud into the dust below. No bones break, only egos. But the pursuit, the chase, the falling, it all counts. These are not accidents. They are rehearsals for the real chases, the real escapes, when the game becomes a gauntlet and the player becomes the prey. And yet, for all its laughter and lightness, the predator playground is not without shadows. because here the line between play and peril is faint, and the savannah keeps no referees. Sometimes the games invite more than participants. They attract watchers. One morning, as a group of wildebeest calves stampedes in a playful relay across a dry riverbed, their tails flicking, their hooves tossing up puffs of powdery dust, a ripple of energy passes through the adults nearby. Subtle but unmistakable. Ears twitch, heads rise. The rhythm of the game falters. But the young do not notice. They race on, breathless and unburdened by caution. They have not yet learned that joy makes noise, and noise attracts attention. Beyond the ridge, concealed in the grass, a female leopard shifts her weight ever so slightly. Her body is motionless to the eye, but within her a tide is rising. Her tail twitches, her gaze narrows, and her muscles tense with the slow, deliberate patience of a creature that never hurries unless it's already too late. She watches the calves not with malice, but with opportunity. Their play is their teacher, and hers. When she strikes, it is not theatrical. It is almost quiet, except for the thundering panic that follows. One calf, slower than the rest, pays the price of joy. The others do not return for it. There are no goodbyes on the savannah. Still, the games resume the next day. The lesson has been absorbed, not spoken. The calves now run slightly differently. Tighter turns, earlier starts, a glance over the shoulder mid-dash. Play evolves. It hardens into preparedness. The very instinct that brought them to danger becomes the one that might someday help them avoid it. Back among the hyenas, a different kind of practice unfolds. Pups circle one another, barking and nipping, trading roles as aggressor and victim in short bursts of exaggerated violence. Their jaws, still growing, test pressure and placement, and though no blood is drawn, the weight of their games grows heavier with each passing week. They imitate the adults without knowing, mimicking the herd-splitting tactics, the flank feints, the lunges. What seems like madness is choreography in the making, a brutal ballet learned in stages. The charm of all this lies not just in the spectacle of youth, but in the strange grace of nature's logic. For animals that may never see adulthood, every playful skirmish is a brushstroke on the canvas of survival. There is no waste here. Every tumble builds reflex. Every leap refines muscle. Every pretend hunt lays the neural groundwork for the real ones that will come unannounced, when hunger is sharp and error is final. And so the playground of the savannah, while filled with laughter in the animal sense, with tumbles, squeals, mock roars and frantic chases, is also steeped in the quiet understanding that life here does not allow many rehearsals. The joy is genuine, but never naive. Even fun comes at a cost, and the stakes are never truly absent. But it is within these games, chaotic and imperfect, that the future hunters, chasers, runners and dodgers are shaped. Sculpted not by lectures or discipline, but by the raw, exuberant and often dangerous joy of simply learning to move. The savannah is not known for mercy. It stretches wide under the weight of a sun that knows no compassion. Its horizon broken only by acacia trees bent by time and wind, and the slow, patient tread of animals that have learned to endure. From a distance, the landscape can seem peaceful. Golden grass rolling gently, herds shifting like liquid shadow, vultures circling with an artist's grace against the vast, endless blue. But beneath this beauty is a world finely tuned to indifference. For those born here, survival is not a birthright. It is a fragile thread, often held not in one's own grip but in the presence of a mother. And when that thread snaps, when that presence disappears, everything changes. In the early light, before the land is fully awake, a young elephant calf stands at the edge of a dry riverbed, ears drooping low, trunk limp like an abandoned rope. Its mother lies still nearby, collapsed during the night, her great body already beginning to stiffen under the heat. The matriarchs had called out at dawn, circling, touching, rumbling in low, vibrating tones that carried both inquiry and farewell. But now the herd is gone. The living cannot wait for the dead, not even when the dead was once their anchor. The calf watches the empty horizon, trunk reaching out into the silence like a question no one intends to answer. Her scent still lingers, warm, earthy, tinged with dust and dung and comfort, but he cannot follow it. Only the memory remains. Elephants are social in ways few creatures can match. Their emotional bonds stretch across generations, and the loss of one can fracture the rhythm of a whole herd. When calves are orphaned young, their chances dim considerably. Their learning halts. The migration routes, The invisible trails remembered only by matriarchs vanish from their minds. The safe watering holes, the knowledge of when to dig, when to run, when to wait, all that is taught slowly across years. Without guidance, the calf's world becomes a maze with no walls and no directions. But sometimes, rarely, the savannah offers grace. In the Ngorongoro highlands, an elephant herd pauses its march when a motherless calf appears, floundering behind a dust trail. At first there is confusion, hesitation, a ripple of unease, but then a matriarch steps forward, touching the calf's flank with her trunk, nudging it into the group. Another adult circles back and makes space. The adoption is unspoken but real. From that moment, the calf becomes one of them. Its odds, still difficult, just changed. Such acts are not born from sentimentality, but from something older and more primal. The understanding that strength lies in numbers, and that the survival of the group sometimes depends on carrying the weakest among them. Not all orphans are so lucky. In the thorny brushlands near the Mara River, a lion cub no older than a few weeks stares into the charred remains of a once vibrant den site. The pride has moved on, and he is not with them. Whether they abandoned him during a nighttime skirmish, or he simply failed to keep pace is unclear. It does not matter. He wanders now, swatting at insects that buzz too close to his ears, mewling softly, pacing in spirals as if the grass itself might offer comfort. His fur is already beginning to dull, the sheen of youth fading under stress and sun. Predators ignore him at first. A cub this small offers little reward, but the scavengers are less picky. Jackals circle. A marabou stork watches with tilted curiosity. Lions rarely adopt outside their own bloodline, and solitary cubs usually meet quiet ends. But there are strange exceptions, carved into the margins of nature's rulebook. One pride, fractured by infighting and reunion, once allowed a stray male cub to integrate after its mother was killed by buffalo. The lionesses, perhaps confused by his scent, perhaps moved by instinct they could not explain, tolerated his presence until he grew strong enough to contribute. In adulthood, he helped defend the pride's territory. A former outsider become its guardian. His legacy was carved not from dominance, but from survival. Hyena clans offer a harsher path. Within the labyrinthine tunnels of their underground dens, hierarchy is law, and lineage decides one's future before the first breath. Orphaned pups are rarely accepted by other females, who recognize strangers by scent and reject them without hesitation. Some manage to shadow the clan from a distance, scavenging scraps, mimicking behaviors, blending just enough to avoid being driven off entirely. Others vanish, not in dramatic battles or cinematic encounters, but in slow, invisible declines. Hunger takes longer than a lion's claws, but it is more certain. In the open plains, where the grasses wave like oceans and the wind carries the smell of crushed stems and distant fire, orphans among the antelope are common but rarely visible. A mother struck by a leopard or a car hit in a poacher's snare can leave behind a fawn with no idea where to run or when to freeze. These young ones are often silent, as if understanding instinctively that noise is a death sentence. They shadow herds, blend in as best they can, mimic the movements of those who were lucky enough to remain mothered. Sometimes it works, sometimes the predators notice. The savannah, after all, does not grade on effort, and yet not all the stories end in silence. A young cheetah, orphaned after her mother was killed by hyenas during a kill, was once seen shadowing her older siblings for weeks, never quite part of the group, but never far behind. They tolerated her in strange, limited ways, letting her feed last, never grooming her, but also never chasing her off. She grew slower, leaner, more cautious than the others, but she also grew smarter. When they moved toward dense brush, she took higher ground. When they chased game, she began flanking instead of sprinting straight. By the time she reached maturity, she hunted alone, awkwardly at first, then efficiently. She did not become dominant or famous, but she lived, and in the savannah that's often enough to count as a victory. There is a certain melancholy in watching the orphaned try to stitch themselves into a world that offers no needle. The young are not mourned here the way humans mourn. There are no graveyards, no names whispered through generations. When a calf is lost, the herd moves. When a cub is abandoned, the pride adjusts. It is not heartless, it is practical. Mourning does not fill bellies or quench thirst, but survival, if earned, honors the fallen in its own quiet way. And still, in all this, there is something undeniably beautiful. The sight of a lone creature defying the odds, of life continuing not through strength or speed alone, but through stubbornness, chance, and something that looks remarkably like courage. In a world where the absence of a parent can mean the collapse of a future, every orphan that finds a way to continue becomes a tiny miracle stitched into the larger fabric of nature's indifference. So the sun rises again, as it always does, over fields where some run with family and others run alone. The grasses hide many stories, most lost, some survived, and beneath every footprint lies a history of someone who taught them how to walk, or the silent ache of having to learn it alone. The first thing a newborn gazelle learns is not the sound of its mother's voice, nor the texture of grass beneath its hooves, but the direction of the wind. Before the legs are steady, before milk soothes the hunger, before sight fully clears, there is instinct, and it whispers, "Danger moves with scent." Life in the savannah begins with a breath taken in fear, and from that moment onward, prey animals must learn one lesson faster than all others: stay alive long enough to remember it. Across the wide floodplains, where the grass shifts like a breathing sea and every rustle could be something watching, a nursery of newborn wildebeest shivers in the early morning cold. Their bodies, all knobby knees and wet fur, press close to mothers still slick with afterbirth. Around them the herd murmurs, low grunts, soft snorts, the occasional huff of irritation as adult bodies reposition. But this fragile calm is a curtain, thin and temporary, because the predators already know what has happened. A new generation has arrived, and with it, a buffet of inexperience. The young wildebeest stands within minutes of birth, trembling as the ligaments in its legs remember how to work. Its first steps are clumsy, but its second are faster. In less than half an hour it can run. Not gracefully, not expertly, but fast enough to matter. This is not evolution's kindness, it is its necessity. Calves that cannot rise are trampled. Calves that hesitate are consumed. The savannah does not cradle its infants. It throws them into the deep end, and the only flotation device is terror. Not far off, a band of impala fawns practices the art of vanishing. Their mothers graze loosely, but always with one eye half closed in surveillance. The fawns play in short bursts, a hop, a twist, a dash through invisible boundaries. These are not aimless games. Each leap calibrates muscles, refines split-second reactions, tunes the joints to the speed required for the kind of sprint where the only prize is survival. They do not know the words for fear, but they live within it, a constant vibration just beneath the skin. Even their coats help hide them. Tan-flecked with cream, they disappear against the grass as if the land itself was protecting them, though it never does. In the mud-washed banks of a seasonal waterhole, warthog piglets scuttle through a labyrinth of reeds and hoofprints. Their tails stand straight like antennae, bobbing as they follow the grunts of a watchful mother. She teaches them not to wander far, to dive into burrows head first and back out only when the coast is clear. Warthogs are not built for speed like gazelles, nor strength like buffalo, but for unpredictability. Their best defense lies in memory and panic, a zigzag escape strategy sharpened by generations of close calls. The piglets practice mock sprints with each other, squealing, colliding, spinning in clouds of dust. Their joy is genuine, but also strategic, the rehearsal before the ambush. And the ambush always comes. On the edge of a sunburned plain near a termite mound that leans like a crumbling statue, a cheetah crouches low in the yellow grass. Her gaze is fixed, body still, tail twitching only slightly. Not from impatience, but calculation. She watches a small group of Thompson's gazelle fawns grazing under the illusion of safety. The wind is on her side. The ground is flat. The gap between her and them is measurable in heartbeats. But among the fawns, one lifts its head, ears rotating with nervous precision. It doesn't run, not yet, but it senses the wrongness in the air. This one has been chased before. This one has learned. When the cheetah sprints, the world fractures into noise. Birds erupt from the trees. Dust explodes beneath pounding hooves. The herd splits, a waterfall of motion in every direction. But the fawns don't flee blindly. They remember terrain. They follow their mothers. They bank hard at thorn clusters and pivot without warning. The one that noticed the danger first veers into the wind, letting it carry his scent away. It doesn't matter if he's fast. He has to be smarter. And in this moment, he is. The chase ends 50 meters short, not with blood, but with breathlessness. The cheetah slows, panting, staring after the herd now melted into the horizon. The fawns regroup in the distance, hearts hammering, legs twitching from the leftover adrenaline. For the cheetah, this is failure. For the fawns, this is a lesson and a victory. For young prey animals, survival is less about strength and more about attention. The ones who live are not always the boldest or the fastest, but the most observant. Those who freeze when others flinch, who remember the pattern in the predator's hunt, who notice when the birds go quiet. In their world, even the wind is a teacher. A subtle shift in its direction changes the entire geometry of their escape. A baby giraffe, only a few days old, stands in the shade of her towering mother, her spindly legs trembling under the weight of newness. She is tall enough to see over most bushes already, but her legs are a liability. If she trips, she won't rise quickly. Her spots, like sun-dappled shadows, camouflage her only from above, not from the hyenas that lurk at night, or the lions who prefer ambush from below. Her mother never sleeps deeply, and the calf learns to do the same, dozing in bursts, always half aware of the snap of a twig or the hush of paws moving over sand. But among prey there is also community, loose and fragile, but potent. In the great migrations, calves are born into moving cities. Thousands of zebras, wildebeests and gazelles move as one. And while danger stalks them daily, there is strength in the confusion of many. A lion may target one, but it must first identify that one in a blur of stripes and stamping hooves. For the young, learning to stay close, not too close to slow the adults, but never far enough to fall behind, is a lesson absorbed with every step. Not every young prey animal survives its first year, most don't. In fact, the savannah's balance depends on this brutal ratio. The grass grows because some calves don't escape. The vultures thrive because some fawns fall behind. The predators raise their own young because the prey's losses allow it. There is no malice in this exchange, only equilibrium. But that does not diminish the courage required to be born at the bottom of the food chain and to climb each day toward another sunrise. To grow up hunted is to learn that peace is a fleeting thing, that stillness is earned, and that fear, far from a weakness, is a form of wisdom. It teaches you to listen better, to move smarter, to trust your instincts even when they contradict your senses. It makes you fast, but also precise. It sharpens your muscles, yes, but more importantly, it shapes your mind. Because in the wild, where predators are inevitable, escape is not about outrunning them forever. It's about outlasting them long enough to raise young of your own and to teach them how to run too. And so the gazelle leaps, the wildebeest calves follow the herd. The warthogs dive into tunnels head first, and the giraffe watches from above. All of them moving not with fear, but with knowledge. They were not born lucky, they were born vulnerable, and that in the world of prey is its own kind of strength. The sun, heavy and unapologetic, sinks slowly over the savannah, stretching shadows across the dust-hardened earth like long, unraveling secrets. In the fading heat of the afternoon, the land softens into a theater of ambiguity, where the lines between kin and competitor blur, and where the bonds of family, once forged in warmth and nurture, begin to splinter under the slow pressure of time. For the young males of this wild kingdom, lions, leopards, hyenas, childhood is not a gentle chapter that fades into age. It is a debt, paid back with exile, blood, or dominance. And in the deepening twilight, the soft edges of youth begin to harden into something sharper, something darker. The unmistakable silhouette of the rival. Beneath the cover of an ancient sausage tree, a lion pride sprawls in lazy repose, the air thick with the scent of heat, dust, and the acrid tang of old kills. The cubs, now lanky subadults, stretch and twitch in their sleep, dreams curling in their paws, while the lionesses, ever watchful even in slumber, rest one eye open to the wind. But near the edge of the pride, half in shadow, half in gold, lie the young males. Their manes are awkward patches of growth, not yet regal, not yet respected. They wrestle less now, speak less in the language of play. There is weight in their silence, as if they too can feel the invisible line drawing closer, the moment when their presence will no longer be tolerated. The dominant male, thick-necked and scarred from years of conquest, lifts his head from the grass and locks eyes with one of them. The look lasts only seconds, but within it is everything: authority, recognition, and the beginning of rejection. The pride may have raised them, nursed them, taught them how to hunt, but it was never meant to keep them. In fact, it must not. When male cubs grow too large, they become a question that cannot remain unanswered. They are not sons, they are contenders. The expulsion is not always violent. Sometimes it is merely distance, a shift in the pride's movement, a sudden coldness from the females, the quiet understanding that food no longer reaches them first. The young males begin to linger at the fringes, following at a delay, sleeping apart. They grow hungry more often. The dominant male becomes less tolerant, snapping with a growl, asserting space with deliberate strides. And then one day the message becomes physical. A swat, a bite, a chase, a command not to return. This exile marks the most dangerous season of a male's life. Alone or with a brother, he steps into a world where every lion he meets is a threat. Every meal must be earned without help, and every roar in the night reminds him that he is nothing yet. These young males wander miles in search of what no one will give them: territory, mates, recognition. The journey is long and brutal, and most will not survive it. Some die of starvation, others in fights with coalitions stronger and more seasoned. The savannah is littered with the bones of almost kings, yet some persist. They grow leaner, tougher, more calculating. They learn to scavenge without shame, to stalk without overreaching, to attack only when certainty outweighs hunger. And in time, they circle back. Not always to the place they were born, but to a place that reminds them of it. A pride with young cubs, guarded by a male whose strength is beginning to ebb. The returning male, now scarred and fully maned, watches from the brush. He does not see a family. He sees a fortress with cracks in its walls. When the takeover begins, it is swift and merciless. The reigning male may stand his ground, but age does not lend him mercy. If he falls, he is banished, if not killed. And the cubs, the blood of his loins, his legacy in fur and breath, become the next casualties. The new ruler cannot afford to raise another's heirs. His first act is often infanticide. The lionesses resist, but only briefly. They know what this means. Their grief has a schedule. Within weeks they will come into estrus again, and the cycle will begin anew. Nature's logic is rarely sentimental. Among leopards, the story unfolds with quieter violence. These solitary hunters raise cubs alone, fiercely protective and intensely private. The mother hides her young in caves, high in trees, deep in thickets. She moves them often, keeps their scent masked, and kills without hesitation to protect them. But time betrays them too. As the male cub grows, he becomes more than a shadow in her steps. He becomes a presence too large to conceal. When her tolerance wanes, it is not a fight but a fading. She stops calling, stops sharing kills. The cub, bewildered, follows her scent until it ends abruptly. He calls out, but she does not return. He is no longer hers. This male, now alone, must learn the territories carved out by others. Territories guarded by older males who patrol with teeth and venom. If he's unlucky, he is caught and chased. If he's fortunate, he disappears into the margins where he can learn from the edges. He will not be welcomed, not even by sisters. Maturity in the leopard's world is not a celebration. It is a sentence of exile with a possibility of power. And if he survives long enough, he may someday take a territory of his own. But even then, he is never safe. A younger male will already be watching. The spotted hyena, often misunderstood and more politically complex than its scavenger reputation implies, offers a different twist. In clans led by dominant females, the sons are not expelled by brute force, but by social attrition. Young males, despite being born into royalty, find their ranks slipping with age. Their mothers stop defending them. Highborn daughters begin to challenge them. They drop in status like stones in mud. Eventually they leave voluntarily, drifting between clans, looking for one that will tolerate or need an outsider. Integration is difficult. They are greeted with suspicion, mocked, tested. Only the most submissive survive, working their way slowly up from the very bottom. Here, dominance is not seized. It is rented if you're lucky. The paradox across species is striking. These young males, once cherished and protected, become dangerous by design. Their growth is the very threat that tears apart the safety of their beginnings. Nature does not crown kings with ceremony. It creates them through attrition. The weak do not fall by misfortune. They fall because their world demands it. Strength is not admired here. It is feared, tested, and eventually removed. And yet there is something deeply poetic in this ruthless rotation. The very ones who were pushed out return to push others. The hunted become hunters. The forgotten become feared. In this cycle, there are no villains, only roles. Roles that shift with the angle of the sun and the thickness of a mane. Blood means less than timing. Loyalty bows to necessity. As night falls over the savannah, the roars begin again. Deep, reverberating, staking claims no one will see, but everyone will feel. Somewhere a young male listens calculating, somewhere else another turns away, defeated. And beneath the stars, the great machine continues, not because it is just, but because it is efficient. The alpha casts a long shadow, and within that shadow, sons are learning how to become kings. Not by inheritance, but by conquest. The savannah has always spoken in the language of survival, a whisper of wind through the grass, the low crack of twigs beneath paws, the distant roll of thunder that may bring life or false hope. But there are times when even these familiar sounds vanish, when silence thickens and the earth itself seems to hold its breath. This is the season without forgiveness, when clouds pass overhead without pausing, when the rivers shrink into cracked veins. When hunger is no longer a problem to be solved, but a presence to be endured. This is not a hunt, nor a chase. It is the great test, when predators take a back seat and the true enemy becomes the land itself. The drought begins quietly. The rains simply do not come. The skies remain a blistering, cloudless dome for weeks, then months. Waterholes shrink first to puddles, then to mud, then to bitter dust that cakes on the lips of anything foolish enough to drink from it. The animals grow restless, then silent. Even the birds, once noisy messengers of each morning, grow cautious and thin. The young are the first to feel it. Not because they're weaker, many are stronger than they seem, but because they don't yet know how to pace thirst, how to distinguish between real relief and a mirage shimmering at the horizon like liquid hope. A young elephant calf trudges behind her mother, her ears flapping not from joy, but to cool a body now heating from within. Her steps, once playful and sure, are slower now, her trunk dragging in the dust as she scans the ground for the ghost of moisture. The matriarch presses on, her memory navigating routes that haven't held water in 2 years but might again, because memory, not instinct, is the only map when the earth forgets to provide. Around them, the herd walks in grave determination. The calves have stopped trumpeting during play. Their squeals have been replaced by low rumbles of discomfort, and even those are rare. Energy must be conserved. Everything, even noise, has a cost. On the plains, where once the grass danced in waves of green, there is only stubble now. Dry yellow blades that crumble underfoot like old parchment. A herd of wildebeest moves like a mirage, kicking up a thin cloud of dust that settles on their coats in a grey film, giving them the appearance of ghosts marching across a battlefield. Among them, the calves stumble more often. Their ribs begin to show through hide stretched too tightly. Mothers pause to lick them, not for affection, but in the desperate hope that even that brief contact might cool them. Predators, too, feel the change. It's easy to forget they suffer, but they do, perhaps more keenly. Without rain, prey stops moving. Without movement, hunts become harder. A lioness lies under the shade of a skeletal tree, her mouth slightly open, panting not from exertion but from heat alone. Her cubs, once rowdy and insatiable, now lie curled against her like shadows. They've not eaten in days. They no longer stalk each other in games. Play is a luxury that vanished with the water. And with every dry sunrise, the lioness knows she may have to choose, follow the herd farther than safety allows, or let her young go quietly. As the drought deepens, so too does its cruelty. Animals begin to congregate at the last water sources, muddy pits half consumed by algae, shaded only by the bones of trees long dead. The gathering is tense, a congregation of enemies who are too tired to fight. Hyenas lie beside zebras. Jackals slink between gazelles. Predators and prey stand together, eyes watchful, tongues swollen, bound not by peace but by thirst. And always, the young, wide-eyed and slow-footed, stand closest to danger, too inexperienced to know that even in shared suffering, the rules of the savannah do not bend for long. Then comes the fire. It never announces itself politely, it explodes. A dry crackle becomes a roar within minutes, carried not just by heat but by wind. Swift, cruel gusts that lift flames and toss them like spears across the brittle landscape. Smoke thickens the air before the flames even arrive. Birds take to the sky in panicked flocks, and antelope begin to stampede in blind terror. But the young, so new to this kind of threat, often hesitate. A warthog piglet freezes as the sky darkens, unsure if the glow beyond the hill is sunset or something else. Its mother grunts, bolts, and the piglet follows. Too late. The heat slams into the grass like a wall, and the fire eats not with teeth, but with time and suffocation. Not all fires are accidental. Sometimes they are nature's strange reset, sparked by lightning during dry storms. Sometimes they are ignited by human hands, farmers clearing land, unaware or uncaring that a shift in the wind will send destruction galloping across the plains. The animals do not know the difference. To them, fire is not an event, it is an emotion, a fear that moves too fast to understand. But the savannah is not only brutal, it is cyclical, and just as fire consumes, it also cleanses. The very next rains, when they do come, will find soil enriched with ash, ready to explode in life again. But for the young, this knowledge is irrelevant. They do not know about cycles. They only know the immediate, that their tongues are dry, their legs ache, and their mothers no longer smell the same. Some survive. The elephant calf reaches a hidden spring, guided by her matriarch's ancient knowledge. A lion cub, having lost its siblings, follows vultures to a scavenged kill and feeds enough to survive another week. A zebra foal, skin blackened by soot, finds new green grass sprouting weeks after the fire passed. These are not triumphs, they are reprieves, but they are enough. Sometimes enough is everything, and some do not survive. Their bodies are found weeks later, skeletal and fragile, lying near dried riverbeds or collapsed in scorched clearings. The scavengers, ever patient, complete the cycle. There is no waste here. Even death feeds something. The great test is not a battle nor a singular moment. It is a slow, dragging gauntlet that stretches across weeks, sometimes months. It does not strike like a predator, but surrounds like a fog, and it leaves no creature untouched. Even the survivors carry its marks, in the way they sleep more lightly, eat more quickly, or lead their young down different paths the following year. It rewrites memory, it redraws instinct, it redefines strength. For the young of the savannah, learning to hunt, hide, or run is no longer enough. They must learn to outlast the sky, to listen not just for footsteps in the grass, but for silence too deep, for wind too warm. They must learn that sometimes the most dangerous predator is not the one with teeth, but the ground that cracks underfoot, the sky that refuses to weep, and the flame that dances not out of hunger, but out of indifference. And when the rains finally do return, pounding the dust into mud, filling the rivers with song, and coaxing green shoots from blackened earth, there is no celebration. Only relief. The great test is over for now, but the lesson remains, not in words or symbols, but in the silence left behind, and in the eyes of the young who lived through it. The air before dawn in the savannah is thick with anticipation, the kind that lingers before something permanent changes. It is not quite still, but not yet alive, a suspended breath held by the horizon, waiting for the moment the sun spills over and unlocks the land's rhythm again. The grass is heavy with dew, but the scent on the wind is dry, touched by the iron of blood long since spilled and the promise of more to come. It is a morning like countless others, yet for one young predator, today is different. Today is the day instinct meets execution. There is no ceremony for this rite of passage, no applause or anointing. The savannah doesn't acknowledge milestones with celebration, it simply watches. And on this morning, among the acacia shadows and golden mist, it watches a lion cub, now a gangly subadult with paws too big for silence and eyes too full of need, prepare to cross the invisible line that separates child from killer. He has been close before. He has chased and missed, stalked and stumbled, lunged too early and collapsed too soon. His muscles remember failure like bruises. But something in his gait today feels more deliberate, more sharpened, as though the mistakes have begun to teach him more than hunger ever could. The lionesses move with quiet purpose, cutting through the tall grass with that peculiar blend of grace and menace unique to experienced hunters. They are not slow, they are measured. Behind them the young male follows, less a shadow than a pale echo. His breathing is careful now, no longer ragged with excitement. He steps where they step. He ducks when they duck. He has begun to understand that the silence before the kill is as important as the power of the pounce. Ahead, a small herd of zebra grazes near a patch of disturbed earth, unaware of the watchers hidden just beyond the curtain of grass. The zebras are cautious by nature, but today their ears flick lazily, their tails swish without urgency. The wind favors the lions, carrying the scent of prey straight to their nostrils while cloaking their own. It is the kind of luck the savannah offers only rarely, and never for long. The lionesses fan out like fingers of a closing hand. The young male holds position, heart drumming against his ribs like a drumbeat calling from deep within. He locks eyes with a yearling zebra, smaller, slower, slightly separated from the herd. It is a calculation born not from cruelty, but from necessity. The weak are not targeted out of malice. They are chosen because the margin for error is thin, and the cost of failure is always hunger. Time contracts. The signal comes not through words, but through motion. A flick of the tail, a subtle crouch, a breath held tighter. And then they burst forward, the grass parting like water, the silence shattered by the thundering of hooves and the cries of surprise. The chase is short but savage. The lionesses drive the herd forward, cutting off retreat. The young male commits. No hesitation this time. His paws find traction, his body lowers into a stride not yet elegant but unmistakably predatory. The zebra darts left. He follows. She stumbles. He surges. And then, contact. The moment is raw and clumsy. His claws scrape rather than pierce. His bite lands too high. The zebra kicks, writhes, nearly breaks free. But he adjusts, grappling with the desperate, flailing weight beneath him. His jaw closes again, this time around the throat, and instinct takes over. His muscles tremble not from weakness but from the electric shock of realization. He is doing it. The life he takes is not taken cleanly, but it is taken nonetheless. The zebra goes still. The world narrows to breath, blood, and the sudden surreal quiet that follows the storm. He stands over the body, panting, his face streaked with sweat, dust, and crimson. The lionesses circle back, their eyes unreadable but present. One sniffs the kill. Another begins to feed. No one congratulates him. No one scolds. In the wild, approval is not spoken. It is shared through space, through the allowance of proximity. He is not pushed aside. That is the recognition. That is the crown. Elsewhere, the ritual repeats in different forms. A young cheetah, sleek and solitary, coils low in a sea of dry grass. Her target is a hare, not a zebra. Smaller, faster, but enough. Her mother no longer hunts for her. She has been on her own for weeks, failing more than succeeding. But today, her legs move like a whisper through the wind. And when she explodes into motion, it is with a rhythm that feels less like a chase and more like a calling. The hare dodges. She pivots. Dust curls behind her like smoke. Her claws slice the air, and for the first time, they do not miss. The body goes limp. She carries it in her mouth with an awkward mix of pride and confusion. It is not the size of the prey that matters. It is the fact that it is hers, earned, not gifted. Far from the big names of the savannah, a young black-backed jackal stalks insects near a dried-up stream bed. It is his first solo kill, a scrub hare napping too long in a sun-warmed hollow. It doesn't sound like much, but for a creature constantly out-muscled by hyenas, leopards, and vultures, every scrap matters. He shakes with adrenaline as he buries part of the prize under a tuft of grass, looking up every few seconds as though the world might realize what he's just done and demand it back. The first kill is a strange alchemy. The first kill, it marks not only survival, but a transformation. The moment the wild accepts you not as a burden, but as a participant. It is not glorious. It is often messy, chaotic, and stained with hesitation. But it is also the most honest moment a young predator will ever experience. No teacher can guide it. No sibling can share it. It must be done alone, and it changes everything. There is something deeply paradoxical about this final step. To live, another must die. To graduate into adulthood, a life must end by your own effort. And yet, this exchange is not heartless. It is not cruelty. It is the contract of the land, honored not with malice but with hunger, instinct, and necessity. As the day warms and the wind rises again across the scorched plain, the young lion curls beside his kill, no longer trembling. His belly swells with his first full meal earned without assistance. Around him, the pride begins to settle. The sky rolls with heat. Flies gather. The blood in the grass darkens, then dries. In the savannah's endless classroom, where every lesson is taught through risk and every exam is pass or die, the cub has earned his final mark. There are no certificates, no fanfare, only breath and dust and the quiet knowing that from this moment forward, he is no longer just a learner of the wild. He is part of it, forever.